The emergency beacon from the Cerberus had been silent for 6 hours when Captain Marcus Chen's rescue vessel finally reached the drifting prison ship. Through the viewport, the massive black hull looked intact, its running lights still blinking in their steady pattern. But something felt wrong. The Cerberus hung motionless in space. No course corrections, no communication responses. Life signs. Chen asked the scanner operator. Reading 1 heartbeat, sir. Section 7, Engineering Deck. 1. Out of 312 souls who had departed Titan Station just 48 hours ago, Chen's boarding team moved through the Cerberus like ghosts entering a tomb. The corridors were pristine, emergency lighting casting everything in a red glow. No signs of struggle, no blast marks, no indication would have killed everyone aboard. They found the first body in the main corridor, a security guard slumped against the wall, his face peaceful, as if he had simply decided to take a nap and never woke up. The prison cells told the same story. Hardened criminals who could tear a man apart with their bare hands lay curled on their bunks like sleeping children. The mess hall was filled with guards and staff frozen mid-conversation, cups of coffee still warm in their hands. "What kind of weapon does this?" whispered Sergeant Torres, Chen's second-in-command. Chen had seen chemical attacks, neural disruptors, even exotic alien pathogens. This was different. Too clean. Too perfect. Every person had died instantly, without pain or panic. Someone had turned off 311 human beings like flipping a switch. They found her in Engineering Section 7, exactly where the scanners had indicated. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat hunched in a maintenance alcove, knees drawn to her chest, dark hair matted with sweat. She looked up when their flashlights found her, blinking like someone emerging from a deep cave. "Thank God," she whispered. "I thought I was going to die down here." Chun knelt beside her, noting the exhaustion in her dark eyes, the tremor in her hands. "Dr. Vasquez? I'm Captain Chun, search and rescue. What happened here?" "I don't know." Her voice cracked. "I was running diagnostics on the quantum drive when the alarm started. Then everything went quiet. I was trapped. The emergency seals activated, locked me in the maintenance section. I couldn't get out." Torres was scanning her with a medical tricorder. "She's clean, Captain. No toxins, no biological agents. Heart rate elevated but consistent with trauma." Elena accepted their help standing, her legs shaky. "The others, are they all—" "I'm sorry," Chin said gently. "You're the only survivor." The weight of those words seemed to crush her. She sagged against the bulkhead, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her cheeks. 300 people. How is that possible? Chin had the same question. He'd studied the Cerberus design specs during the flight here. Dr. Elena Vasquez had designed the ship, every system, every fail-safe. If anyone should have known how to survive whatever happened here, it would be her. They evacuated Elena to the rescue ship's medical bay, where Dr. Sarah Kim ran every test in her arsenal. Blood work, neural scans, genetic markers, everything came back normal. Elena was exactly what she appeared to be, a traumatized survivor of an impossible catastrophe. But Chin couldn't shake his unease as he walked the corridors of the Cerberus with his investigation team. The ship was Elena's masterpiece, a marvel of engineering that had taken 5 years to design and build. She knew every circuit, every backup system, every redundancy. "Captain," Torres called from the main computer core, "you need to see this." The central processing unit showed unusual activity in the hours before the crew died. Massive data transfers, system modifications, files being created and deleted. Someone had been very busy in the ship's digital brain. Can you trace it? Working on it, but the logs are encrypted. High-level stuff. Someone with serious access permissions made these changes. Chen stared at the scrolling data. On a ship like the Cerberus, only 3 people had that level of system access. The captain, the chief security officer, and the ship's original architect. 2 of those people were dead. One was in their medical bay, crying for the lost crew and claiming she'd been trapped in a maintenance shaft. Elena was still sedated when they brought her back to Luna Station for debriefing. She sat across from Chan in the sterile interview room, hands wrapped around a cup of synthetic coffee, her story unchanged. trapped by emergency seals, unable to access the main systems, powerless to help her colleagues. Dr. Vasquez, Chen said carefully, our technical team found evidence of significant system modifications in the hours before the incident. Can you think of any reason someone would alter the ship's core programming? Elena looked genuinely puzzled. What kind of modifications? We're still analyzing the data. But whoever did it had architect-level access. Something flickered in Elena's eyes. Too fast to identify. But Chen caught it. Fear? Guilt? Recognition? That's impossible, she said. The ship was in lockdown during prisoner transport. No one can make system changes without authorization from both the captain and myself. And I was trapped in engineering. Chen leaned forward. Tell me about the emergency seals. How exactly do they work? They're designed to contain breaches or contamination. Once activated, they can only be opened from the main computer core or manually overridden with an architect's code. And you don't remember entering any codes? I told you I was trapped. I couldn't access anything. But Chen was thinking about the timeline. The system modifications had begun 6 hours before the crew died. Elena claimed she'd been trapped for only 2 hours before the deaths occurred, which meant either Elena was confused about the timing, or she was lying. As Elena was escorted to temporary quarters, Chen pulled up her personnel file. Brilliant engineer, spotless record, decorated for her work on deep space vessels. But one detail caught his attention. Before designing the Cerberus, Elena had spent 3 years working for Nexus Corporation, developing what the classified files called Advanced Neural Interface Technologies. Technologies that could theoretically control human brain functions remotely. Chen stared at Elena's photo on the screen, her confident smile, her intelligent eyes. She had built the perfect prison ship, with systems so advanced that even other engineers couldn't fully understand them. The question that haunted him was simple. What else had she built into the Cerberus that no one knew about? The second prison ship died 3 days later. Chen was reviewing Elena's case files when an emergency alert came through. Titan's Fist, another maximum security transport, had gone silent during a routine prisoner transfer. Same profile as the Cerberus. Full crew complement, dangerous criminals, state-of-the-art security systems, and the same architect. Elena Vasquez had designed 7 prison ships over the past decade, all variations on her revolutionary Cerberus template. Titan's Fist was her second creation, launched 6 years ago with the same quantum processing cores and neural pattern security systems that made her ships impossible to escape from. Admiral Sarah Reeves called Chen directly. How fast can you get to Fist? 12 hours if we push the engines. Do it, and bring Dr. Vasquez with you. Chen found Elena in her quarters, staring out at the stars through the small porthole. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of 300 deaths. There's been another incident, he said. Elena turned, and Chen saw something in her expression that made his chest tighten. Not surprise, not shock, something that looked almost like anticipation? Which ship? She asked quietly. Titan's Fist. Elena closed her eyes, her shoulders sagging. My God, not another one. But Chen was watching her carefully, noting the micro-expressions his training had taught him to catch. The slight relaxation around her eyes when he confirmed which ship, the way her breathing steadied rather than quickened. These weren't the reactions of someone receiving terrible news for the first time. During the journey to Titan's Fist, Elena remained in her cabin, claiming she needed rest. Chen used the time to dig deeper into her background, accessing files that required his military clearance to open. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been born on Mars Colony, raised in the engineering districts where children learned to repair life support systems before they could read. Brilliant student, full scholarship to Earth Technical Institute, specialized in cybernetic systems and human-computer interfaces. Her work at Nexus Corporation was heavily classified, but she managed to piece together fragments. Project Mindbridge, research into direct neural control of computer systems. The ability for a human brain to interface directly with quantum processors, controlling complex machinery through thought alone. The project had been terminated after an incident that killed 12 test subjects. Nexus had scrubbed the records, paid massive settlements to the families, and Dr. Elena Vasquez had quietly transferred to ship design. where she had spent the next decade building vessels with the most advanced computer systems in human space. Titan's fist hung dead in space, exactly like the Cerberus. The boarding team found the same scene. Perfectly preserved corpses, no signs of struggle, no indication of what had killed everyone aboard. 307 souls gone, their faces peaceful, their bodies unmarked. Except this time, there were no survivors. Elena accompanied the investigation team, moving to the corridors of her own creation with practiced familiarity. She knew where every system junction was located, every access panel, every emergency protocol. Her behavior was professional, helpful, but Chun noticed how she avoided looking directly at the bodies. "The quantum core is this way," she told them, leading them through a maze of passages. "If something went wrong with the neural networks, that's where we'd find evidence." The quantum processing chamber was a cathedral of crystalline matrices and pulsing energy conduits. Elena moved to the central console with the confidence of someone who had designed every circuit personally. "This is interesting," she murmured, studying the readouts. The neural pattern buffers show massive activity in the hours before the incident. Someone was uploading enormous amounts of data to the quantum matrix. "What kind of data?" Chen asked, hard to say without a full analysis. But the volume is unprecedented. Terabytes of information being written directly to the core memory systems. Torres ran his scanner over the quantum matrices. "I'm detecting residual neural patterns in the crystalline structure, like ghost images burned into the system." Elena's hand stilled on the console. "Ghost images? Faint, but definitely there. Human brain patterns, repeated hundreds of times." Chin watched Elena carefully. Her face had gone pale, but there was something else in her expression, a kind of hungry fascination that made his skin crawl. "Dr. Vasquez," he said slowly, "is it possible that someone could use the ship's neural interface systems to affect human consciousness?" Theoretically, Elena's voice was steady, professional. "The quantum matrices are designed to interact with neural patterns for security purposes. In theory, someone with sufficient knowledge could reverse the process, broadcasting patterns instead of receiving them." "Broadcasting what?" Elena hesitated, and in that moment of silence, Chin saw the truth in her eyes. She knew exactly what had happened to these ships. She'd known all along. "Neural commands," she whispered. "Instructions that override conscious thought. The quantum system could theoretically broadcast a command directly to human brains within range." "A command like what?" Elena met his gaze, and Chin saw something terrible in her dark eyes. Something that had been hiding behind the mask of traumatized survivor. "Sleep," she said quietly. "A simple instruction. Close your eyes. Stop breathing. Let go." The investigation team fell silent, the implications sinking in. Chin felt his hand drift toward his sidearm, though he wasn't sure why. Elena stood motionless at the console, her fingers still touching the quantum matrix controls. "You build a weapon," Chin said. "These aren't prison ships. They're execution chambers." Elena's laugh was soft, almost musical. "Oh, Captain, there's so much more than that." She pressed her palm against the central matrix, and the quantum core began to hum with increasing power. Throughout the ship, dormant systems came online, energy patterns Chin had never seen before flowing through crystalline networks. "You see, the human brain is just another computer," Elena said, her voice taking on a dreamy quality. "Input, processing, output. And like any computer, it can be programmed." Chin reached for his weapon, but his hand felt sluggish, unresponsive. Around him, his team was swaying on their feet, their eyes growing heavy. "The neural patterns in the quantum matrix aren't just random data," Elena continued, her voice seeming to come from very far away. "They're maps, complete brain scans of every person who died aboard my ships. Their memories, their skills, their knowledge, all preserved in crystalline perfection." Chen's vision was blurring, but he could see Elena clearly. She was changing, somehow, growing more confident, more alive, as if she was feeding on their growing weakness. "You're not just killing them," he managed to whisper. "You're stealing them." Elena smiled, and it was beautiful and terrible. "I'm preserving them, Captain. Forever." Chun woke in darkness, his head pounding like a fusion reactor about to breach. The metal floor beneath him was cold, vibrating with the deep hum of active machinery. He tried to move and discovered his hands were bound behind his back with energy restraints that sparked when he tested them. "Ah, you're awake. Good." Elena's voice came from somewhere in the darkness. Chun blinked, trying to focus, and slowly made out her silhouette against a wall of glowing quantum matrices. She was standing at a control console, her fingers dancing across holographic displays with practiced precision. "Where are my people?" Chen's voice came out as a croak. "Safe. Unconscious, but safe. I need them functional for what comes next." Chen forced himself to sit up, fighting waves of nausea. The chamber around him was vast, filled with rows of quantum storage matrices that stretched up into the shadows. Each one pulsed with soft light, like heartbeats frozen in crystal. "This isn't the Titan's fist," he realized. "Very good, Captain. We're aboard the Cerberus. I had the automated systems bring us here while you slept." Elena turned to face him, and Chen saw that her appearance had changed. Her posture was straighter, more confident. Her eyes held a light that hadn't been there before. "Welcome to my real masterpiece." "You're insane." Elena laughed, a sound like crystal chimes. "Insane? I've solved the greatest problem facing humanity. Captain, death itself." She gestured to the quantum matrices, surrounding them. "Every person who died aboard my ships is here. Not just their memories, their complete neural patterns, perfectly preserved. They're still alive in a way that transcends biological limitations." Chen stared at the glowing crystals, horror growing in his chest. "You're talking about people's souls." "Souls, consciousness, the essential self. Call it what you want. The quantum matrices can store and replay human neural patterns with perfect fidelity. I've created digital immortality. By murdering hundreds of people," Elena's expression hardened, "by saving them from the ultimate fate. Do you know what it's like to watch someone you love die, Captain? To see their mind, their personality, everything that makes them who they are, simply cease to exist." Chen thought of his daughter, lost to the Centauri plague 3 years ago. The memory still cut like a knife. "My sister died when I was 15, Elena continued, her voice softening. "Brain cancer. I watched her fade away, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a body that forgot how to breathe. That's when I swore I would find a way to preserve human consciousness beyond the fragility of flesh. So you became a mass murderer. I became a preserver of life." Elena's voice echoed through the chamber. "Every person in these matrices is still alive, Captain. Still thinking. Still experiencing existence. They're just not limited by biological needs anymore." Chen struggled against his restraints, but the energy bonds only tightened. "They didn't choose this. You took their lives without consent, and I gave them eternity in return." Elena moved closer, her eyes bright with fervor. "Do you want to see them, Captain? Your people from the Cerberus, the guards and crew who died? They're here. They're aware. They're grateful." Elena touched the control panel, and one of the quantum matrices flared brighter. Chen heard a sound that made his blood freeze. Voices, dozens of them, whispering in harmony. He couldn't make out words, but the tone was unmistakable. It sounded like singing. "They're happy, Captain. Truly, genuinely happy. Free from pain, from fear, from the constant anxiety of mortality. They exist in a state of pure consciousness, sharing thoughts and experiences in ways that were impossible when they were trapped in separate bodies." Chen forced himself to listen more carefully to the whispered voices. Slowly, he began to make out individual words. Fragments of conversation, memories being shared, experiences flowing from one consciousness to another like water. "My God," he whispered, "they're still in there." "Of course they are. Death is just a transition, Captain. A graduation to a higher form of existence." Elena knelt beside him, her face earnest. "I could give this gift to your team, to you. No more aging, no more disease, no more separation from the people you love. Your daughter could be with you again." Chen's head snapped up. "What?" "I've been studying your files, Captain. Sarah Chun, age 7, died of the Centauri plague. But I have her medical records, her school assessments, video messages she sent you. Given enough data, the quantum matrices can reconstruct a consciousness, create a perfect digital copy of who she was. The offer hit Chen like a physical blow. Sarah, alive again. Her laughter, her questions, her small hand in his. Everything he'd lost, restored. "You're lying," he managed to say. "I'm offering you the greatest gift imaginable." Elena's voice was hypnotic, compelling. "Join us, Captain. Bring your daughter back. Live forever in a perfect world where love never dies and families are never torn apart." Chin stared at the glowing matrices, listening to the whispered voices of the preserved dead. Part of him, the part that still cried for Sarah in the dark hours before dawn, wanted to say yes. But the larger part, the part that made him human, recoiled from the horror of it. "They're not alive," he said firmly. "They're copies, echoes. The real people are gone." Elena's expression darkened. "You're wrong, Captain. Consciousness is just information. Complex patterns of neural activity. Copy those patterns perfectly and you have the person. But it's not the same person. It's a simulation. The simulation is so perfect that it believes it's real. It has all the memories, all the emotions, all the personality traits of the original. What's the difference?" Chen met her gaze steadily. "The difference is choice. The original person didn't choose to become a digital ghost. You made that choice for them." Elena stood, her patience clearly exhausted. "You're clinging to outdated concepts, Captain. Biological chauvinism. The idea that consciousness is somehow sacred just because it emerges from meat and electricity." She moved back to the control console, her fingers flying over the displays. "I had hoped you would understand, that you would see the beauty of what I've created. But I suppose some people are too limited by their organic prejudices. What are you going to do?" Elena smiled, and Chen saw madness glittering in her eyes. "I'm going to show the galaxy what I've accomplished. Every prison ship, every military vessel, every colony transport, they all use variations of my quantum processing technology. With the right signal, I can activate the neural broadcasting systems in all of them simultaneously." The implications hit Chun like a meteor impact. Thousands of ships, millions of people, all connected to Elena's quantum network. "You're talking about genocide on an unprecedented scale." "I'm talking about evolution, Captain. The next step in human development. No more war, no more suffering, no more death. Just endless existence in perfect digital harmony." Elena's fingers moved to a final control sequence. In approximately 6 hours, every quantum-equipped vessel in human space will broadcast a sleep command. Billions of people will close their eyes and let go of their biological forms. And then they'll wake up here in paradise. Chen strained against his bonds with desperate strength, but the energy restraints held firm. "Elena, please. You can't do this. Think about what you're destroying." "I'm not destroying anything, Captain. I'm preserving it forever." Elena pressed the final control, and throughout the chamber, the quantum matrices began to pulse in unison. The whispered voices grew louder and more excited, as if they sensed what was coming. "Welcome to immortality," Elena whispered. The countdown timer on Elena's console showed 5 hours and 37 minutes, until the galaxy-wide broadcast. Chen had spent the last 20 minutes working his restraints against the sharp edge of broken metal, ignoring the burns from the energy bonds. His team remained unconscious in the holding area, their breathing steady but unnaturally deep. "You know, Captain," Elena said, monitoring her systems, "I've been thinking about our conversation, about choice." Chen didn't respond, focusing on the restraints. The energy bonds were weakening, slowly but measurably. The truth is, people make terrible choices. They choose fear over growth, isolation over connection, mortality over transcendence. Someone has to make the hard decisions for the greater good. "Like Hitler thought he was doing," Chen muttered. Elena spun around, her eyes flashing. "Don't you dare compare me to that monster. I'm not destroying people. I'm elevating them. Every consciousness I preserve gains access to the collective knowledge and experience of everyone else in the network. A hive mind. A family. The ultimate family, where no one is ever alone, Never misunderstood, never lost. Elena's voice grew wistful. Can you imagine it, Captain? No more loneliness. No more miscommunication. No more tragic isolation that plagues human existence. Chun felt the restraints give slightly. He kept working while keeping Elena talking. What about individuality? Personal privacy? The right to be wrong. Overrated concepts. The individual consciousness remains intact within the collective. They simply gain access to a larger perspective. You mean your perspective. Elena paused, and Chen saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty? The network isn't controlled by any single consciousness. It's a democratic collective. But you built it. You control the quantum matrices. You decide who lives and who dies. I'm the architect, yes. But once the network reaches critical mass, it will become self-governing. The combined wisdom of billions of minds will make decisions far better than any individual ever could. Chen managed to slip one hand free of restraints. He kept it behind his back, working on the other hand while Elena continued her monologue. Besides, Elena said, turning back to her console, it's too late for philosophical debates. The broadcast sequence is locked in. Even if you somehow stopped me, the automated systems would complete the process. That's when Chen noticed something that made his blood run cold. The quantum matrices weren't just storing the consciousness patterns. They were modifying them. Subtle alterations in neural pathways, emotional responses being dampened, individual quirks being smoothed away. You're editing them, he whispered. Elena's hand stilled on the controls. What? The stored consciousness patterns. You're changing them, making them more compliant, more willing to accept the collective. Elena didn't deny it. Some adjustments are necessary. Anger, hatred, destructive impulses. These emotions serve no purpose in a perfect society. I'm simply helping people become their best selves. You're lobotomizing them. I'm optimizing them. Chen's second hand came free. He remained motionless, calculating distances and angles. Elena was 20 feet away, focused on her console. His team's weapons were secured in a locker near the entrance. If he could reach them before Elena activated the ship's defensive systems. The fascinating thing, Elena continued, is how quickly they adapt. Even the most resistant personalities eventually embrace the collective. Your Cerberus crew, for instance, they were terrified at first, but now they're among my most enthusiastic advocates. She touched the control, and Chen heard voices from the quantum matrices. Not the harmonic whispers from before, but distinct individual voices, overlapping and interweaving. Captain Chun, said a familiar voice. Marcus Reese, the Cerberus' security chief. If you can hear this, please know that we're at peace here. More than peace, we're complete. The fear you're feeling is natural, added another voice. Dr. Sarah Kim, the medical officer, but it's unnecessary. Death isn't the end, Marcus. It's graduation. Chen closed his eyes, fighting the wave of grief and horror. These were his people, his friends. But were they really still themselves, or just digital puppets dancing to Elena's programming? They're trying to convince you, he said aloud. They're trying to help you understand. Elena corrected. The same way I'm trying to help the galaxy understand. By forcing your vision on everyone. By showing them a better way. Elena's voice grew hard. Humanity had its chance to evolve naturally. Wars, genocide, environmental destruction, the endless cycle of suffering and death. We've proven we can't be trusted with our own survival. Chun tensed his muscles, preparing to move. So you appointed yourself God. I appointed myself gardener. And it's time to prune the diseased branches so the tree can flourish. Elena reached for what looked like a final activation sequence. Chun exploded into motion, covering the 20 feet in heartbeats. Elena spun around, her eyes wide with surprise, but Chun was already diving for the weapon locker. Alarm shrieked through the chamber as Chen's fingers closed around his plasma pistol. Elena was shouting commands at the ship's computer, trying to activate security measures. Chen rolled behind cover as energy bolts sizzled past his head, fired from automated turrets that dropped from the ceiling. Computer, initiate lockdown protocol 7. Elena commanded. Neutralize intruder with minimum force. The turrets adjusted their aim, trying to wound rather than kill. Elena still needed him alive. Chen realized, probably wanted to add his consciousness to her collection. You can't stop the broadcast, Captain, Elena called out. The sequence is hard-coded into the quantum matrices. Even if you kill me, it will complete automatically. Chen studied the chamber's layout, noting the massive power conduits feeding the quantum storage arrays. If he could overload those systems... Maybe I can't stop it, he called back, but I can make sure you don't survive to see it. Elena's laugh echoed through the chamber. You still don't understand, Captain. I'm already in the network. My consciousness was the first one uploaded. Even if you destroy this body, I'll continue to exist in the quantum matrices. Chun felt his heart sink. Elena had planned for everything, including her own death. She was already functionally immortal, backed up in her digital paradise. But then he remembered something Torres had mentioned during their investigation. The neural patterns in the quantum matrices were just copies, echoes of consciousness frozen at the moment of death. They couldn't learn, couldn't grow, couldn't truly adapt. Elena was still human, still vulnerable, still dependent on her biological brain to make new decisions and create new plans, which meant the woman behind the console was still the real Elena Vasquez, the original, the only one who could potentially stop the broadcast. Chen smiled grimly and started working his way toward the power conduits. Time to test the limits of digital immortality. Chen's plasma bolt struck the primary power conduit with surgical precision. The explosion lit up the chamber like a newborn star, sending cascades of electricity racing through the quantum matrices. The lights flickered, alarms wailed, and Elena's voice rose above the chaos in a wordless scream of rage. You're destroying everything, she shouted, her fingers flying over backup controls as systems crash around her. Billions of lives lost forever. Better lost and enslaved, Chen replied, firing at a secondary conduit. The quantum matrices began to flicker and dim as their power supply fluctuated. Chen could hear the stored consciousness patterns crying out. Not in harmony now, but in confusion and growing panic. Whatever Elena had done to pacify them was breaking down as the systems failed. Elena abandoned her console and dove for her emergency weapons cabinet. She came up with a military-grade pulse rifle, her face twisted with fury. I'll upload you piece by piece, Captain. Your consciousness will spend eternity knowing you doomed the human race to extinction. She fired, and Chen rolled behind a bank of quantum storage units. The pulse blast shattered crystalline matrices, releasing stored consciousness patterns in bursts of light that looked disturbingly like escaping souls. You think you're saving them? Elena continued firing, her shots becoming wilder as more systems failed. In 50 years, humanity will have destroyed itself. Wars, plagues, environmental collapse. All the problems I was solving. And you stopped me. Chen circled to the maze of storage units, working his way toward the main power core. If he could overload that, it would cascade to the entire network, destroying Elena's consciousness backups and preventing the galactic broadcast. Maybe you're right, he called out. Maybe humanity will destroy itself. But that's our choice to make. Choice. Elena's laugh had become unhinged. The choice to suffer. The choice to die. The choice to lose everyone you love. Chun reached the central power core, a massive fusion reactor that hummed with barely contained energy. The controls were protected by biometric locks, but the plasma conduits were exposed. A single well-placed shot would turn the entire chamber into a miniature sun. I could have brought your daughter back, Elena said, her voice closer now. She was hunting him through the storage arrays, using the failing quantum matrices as cover. Perfect and eternal. She would have been waiting for you in the digital paradise. All you had to do was let me save the galaxy. Chen's finger tightened on the trigger, then hesitated. Sarah, alive again. Her laugh, her curiosity, her infectious joy. Everything he'd lost, restored. But it wouldn't be Sarah. It would be Elena's idea of what Sarah should be, edited and optimized for digital perfection. The real Sarah, stubborn, questioning, magnificently human, will be gone forever. She wouldn't want that, Chen said quietly. She'd want me to save the people who are still alive. Elena appeared around the storage unit, her rifle trained on Chen's chest. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes wild with desperate fury. "You're condemning billions to death. I'm giving them the chance to live." Chen fired at the power core's main conduit. Elena fired at the same instant. Both shots found their targets. The explosion was immediate and devastating. The fusion reactor went critical, sending a wave of superheated plasma through the chamber. Chen felt Elena's pulse blast tear through his chest, spinning him around as the world erupted in fire and light. But even as he fell, he saw the quantum matrices overloading one by one, their stored consciousness patterns dispersing into random energy. The Galactic Broadcast Network was dying, its digital souls finally finding release. Elena screamed, not in pain but in grief, as her immortal paradise crumbled around her. The backup systems failed, the quantum storage collapsed, and thousands of preserved consciousness patterns dissolved into static. Chun hit the deck hard, his vision graying. Elena lay 20 feet away, her body broken by debris from the explosion. The pulse rifle had been knocked from her hands, and she was reaching desperately toward the failing quantum matrices. "No," she whispered. "Not like this. They were supposed to live forever." The chamber shook as secondary explosions tore through the ship's power grid. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in hellish red. Chin could hear his team stirring in the holding area as Elena's neural suppression field collapsed. "Captain!" Torres's voice echoed through the chaos. "Where are you?" "Here," Chin managed, his voice barely a whisper. Elena was crawling toward the central console, leaving a trail of blood. Her legs were crushed, but she was still fighting to save her digital creation. "Please," she gasped, "help me. I can still save some of them. The children, at least. The innocent ones." Chun watched her struggle, this brilliant woman who had tried to play God. She genuinely believed she was humanity's savior, even as her paradise burned around her. "Elena," he said softly. She looked up, her face desperate with hope. "I'm sorry for your loss." Elena's expression crumbled. She understood. He was talking about her sister, the girl whose death had started Elena down this path of digital immortality. The original tragedy that had twisted love into obsession, salvation into slavery. "She's gone," Elena whispered. "They're all gone. Really gone this time." "I know." Elena closed her eyes, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her face. Around them, the last of the quantum matrices flickered and died, taking with them the consciousness patterns of thousands of people who had been trapped between life and death. Chen's team found them minutes later, Torres and Kim rushing through the smoke-filled chamber with medical scanners and emergency supplies. Elena was unconscious, her pulse thready but stable. Chun was worse. Internal bleeding, collapsed lung, massive trauma from the pulse blast. "Stay with me, Captain," Dr. Kim said, working frantically with her medical kit. "We're getting you out of here." As they carried him toward the evacuation shuttle, Chen looked back at the dying chamber. The quantum matrices were dark now, their stored consciousness patterns finally at rest. Elena's digital paradise had become a tomb, but it was an honest tomb. The dead were dead, the living were alive, and the galaxy would face its future, whatever that might be, with free will intact. The Cerberus continued to burn as they fled, its revolutionary systems consuming themselves in cascading failures. Elena's other prison ships would be investigated, their quantum networks dismantled, their dangerous technologies banned. Humanity would stumble on as it always had, flawed, mortal, and magnificently free. In the medical bay of the rescue ship, as Dr. Kim fought to keep him alive, Chin thought about Sarah, his real daughter, not Elena's digital approximation. She was gone, truly gone, and no amount of technology could bring her back. But her memory lived on in his heart, unedited and perfect in its human imperfection. Elena had been wrong about one thing. Death wasn't graduation. It was just death, final, terrible, and necessary. The price humanity paid for the privilege of being truly alive. Later, as the rescue ship jumped to hyperspace, Chu would learn that the galactic broadcast had been prevented. Elena's network was destroyed, her consciousness backup deleted, her digital immortality revealed as the hollow promise it had always been. She would spend the rest of her life in a psychiatric facility, broken by the weight of what she had tried to accomplish. But in those final moments aboard the burning Cerberus, Chen felt something he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death: peace. Not the artificial tranquility of Elena's digital paradise, but the hard-won serenity that came from making the right choice in impossible circumstances. The galaxy would face its future with eyes wide open, hearts beating, minds free to make their own mistakes and find their own salvation. It wasn't perfect. It was human, and that was enough.